You know, it's really sad, you know, when you consider how many of the smaller mom and pop players are ultimately not going to survive. But that's why we see coming out of this thing, there's both winners and losers. And I think, you know, looking at the positive side, there's an awful lot of chain restaurants that are doing things really well, taking care of their customers, putting safety protocols in place, and delivering a really good value experience. So, you know, I agree. I think Wendys is going to be one of those winners because I think they do a great job in that regard.
Who else, and after the run that these stocks have had this year, have they just pulled forward a lot of gains from the future? There
may be something to that. Certainly the fast food brands have done much better sooner. The drive-through convenience, the access they provide consumers, and the value, they have way outperformed the sit-down restaurants for the most part. I think the full-serve restaurants continue to make progress. They actually could be some of the bigger beneficiaries of those smaller mom and pops going out of business, because ultimately it's the mom and pops who really provide that sit-down experience that may be evaporating, that is left to the bigger chains.
Yeah. Bob, you also made a point about 2016. I wasn't aware that back around the election, restaurant attendance dropped precipitously because people were, I think, as you say, literally so focused on being on their TVs, on watching the debates, on watching the election night results come in. Do you see any election risk with these stocks this time around?
You know, I think there is. But I'll tell you, between 4 years ago and today, the shock effect of what we've seen come out of this presidential administration has really kind of worn thin with a lot of consumers, and I think that shock effect isn't as dramatic. The debates this year likely won't be as highly watched. However, the thing that we're especially watching is post the elections. 4 years ago, after the elections, the industry slowed pretty dramatically over the next roughly 6 weeks. And I think it was a souring of the national mood. And I think that the fact that some consumers felt disenfranchised by the outcome very well is something we're going to have to continue to watch for this year.
Bob, you talked about some of the fast foods, the drive-through companies, and you said that the sit-down restaurants relatively aren't doing as well. Many of the I want to get out of the public restaurant space because a lot of the more luxury restaurants around the country are sit-down restaurants. Many of them aren't publicly traded. They must be suffering a great deal because you don't think about calling in to, I don't know, name a fancy restaurant in your town, calling in and going and getting carry-out from the deluxe restaurant.
That's one thing that I think we're beginning to see a few of the stronger players try and adapt and innovate and be able to provide, especially as we're, you know, a lot of the northern markets coming into the winter aren't going to be able to offer the off-premise or the sit-down experience that you can outside on a patio or, you know, under an awning. It's simply going to be too cold. I think they're trying to figure out how can we survive through the winter to come out on the other side. And the fact that these are generally higher check average restaurants that sell the experience, it's hard to provide that experience when you put it in a bag versus a nice, well-appointed restaurant.
Yeah. No, exactly. Are you in Nashville, do I understand? What are you seeing in Nashville?
You know, in Nashville, you know, for the most part, restaurants have been doing fairly well, both out in the suburbs. The downtown market is a little bit more constrained due to more restrictions. There's some loosening there. I would say broadly in this community, the Nashville community versus, say, the major metros in the Northeast, things are a lot looser and a lot more casual. Masks are, you know, certainly I have my mask, and if you go any place, you're going to need to wear a mask to get into the facility, and you'll find more sit-down restaurants, a lot more, versus, say, in New York, for example.
Bad luck for the Tennessee Titans, though, this week. They've got a lot of cases on that team. Bob Darrington, thanks very much.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.